fucking door! Fucking idiot!
Welcome to the Book of Recaps. At the start of the movie, Brad is seen picking white flowers from his garden in the morning. He then makes coffee for his wife, Lexi, who is still in bed. He wakes her up and offers to run the shower for her. While Lexi gets ready for work, Brad continues his usual morning routine. We notice several guitars in their living room, hinting that Brad is pursuing his dream of becoming a musician. While brushing his teeth, he hears an announcement on the radio that grabs his attention. It turns out someone, identity unknown, has bombed several areas in Los Angeles, from downtown to Beverly Hills. These aren't regular bombs. They're called dirty bombs. Not because they leave dirt everywhere, but because they release chemicals that cause viruses in people's bodies. Brad starts to worry about Lexi and tries calling her, but she doesn't answer. The radio then reports that people are running through the streets and collapsing unconscious. Brad grows more anxious. He goes outside and comes back in, trying to call Lexi again. He also tries calling her parents and watches the news, but nothing works. With no way to reach Lexi, Brad looks out again and sees thick smoke rising from the city. Even the radio has gone silent now, and Brad is panicking. He calls Lexi one last time, telling her he's coming to pick her up. He jumps in his car and drives toward downtown. The radio warns people to stay out of infected areas, but Brad keeps going until the cops get involved. He takes a different route after seeing a police blockade ahead. However, he ends up in a minor accident, causing a flat tire. He stops at a hardware store to get tools to fix it. The store is packed with people grabbing supplies. When Brad returns to his car, the radio announces that the ash from the explosion is highly toxic and anyone exposed is infected. They advise everyone to quarantine at home and seal it tightly to prevent air from getting in. Brad immediately heads back to the store to buy a huge supply of duct tape. As he searches for Lexi again, he sees two police cars chasing a vehicle covered in ash. The police are wearing gas masks and order the man inside the car to stay put. When the man tries to escape, they shoot him. Brad is in shock. This is far from a normal day in LA. The officer warns Brad that there's no way he'll find his wife in this chaos, urging him to return home. With no other options, Brad heads back. On the way, he sees a little boy named Timmy standing alone, staring at the smoke coming from the city. Wondering where the boy's parents are, Brad, acting responsibly, tells the kid to go home. When Brad gets back, he finds an intruder in his house. The man turns out to be Alvaro, a handyman from his neighbor's house. Alvaro had nowhere to go and decided to take shelter at Brad's place. Alvaro mentions that his wife is still out in the city and turns on the radio. Meanwhile, Brad is still trying to call Lexi when Alvaro suddenly reacts to some shocking news on the radio. Panicking, Alvaro warns Brad that the ash is heading their way and insists they should seal the house from the inside. But Brad doesn't want to do that yet. He's hoping Lexi will come home soon, so he wants to keep the front door open. It's been about an hour, and the sky is now covered in smoke and ash, but Lexi still hasn't returned. Alvaro politely asks how long they'll keep waiting, but Brad doesn't respond. Instead, he starts sealing the doors and windows, trying to stay calm. The two of them use duct tape and plastic materials, even the shower curtain, to completely seal off the house. In a dramatic moment, Brad sniffs Lexi's clothes, though it turns out he's actually preparing a bag of her clothes and water near the back door, just in case she comes home. Soon after, ash begins to fall from the sky. The news warns that the toxins are incredibly dangerous, but their full effects are still unknown. Alvaro finishes sealing the house, but there's still no word from Lexi. Hours pass, and Brad and Alvaro, now quarantine buddies, have been listening to the radio. Lexi's mom eventually calls Brad, asking to speak with her daughter, but he cuts off the conversation. Meanwhile, we see Lexi stuck in LA traffic. She's alive, but clearly in bad shape. Somehow, she makes it back to their sealed house, calling out for Brad. She's injured and covered in toxic ash. Now Brad has a tough choice. When she asks Brad to let her in, he refuses. Smart move. Lexi quickly realizes what's happening and starts cursing at him. She gets even angrier when she sees that a stranger inside the house, but she isn't. Brad, staying calm, asks her to go to the back door, but Lexi is far from calm. She runs around, eventually finding the water Brad left for her. Brad tells her that he loves her but can't let her in yet. They need to wait for further instructions from the authorities. Though frustrated and upset, Lexi reluctantly agrees. It's night now, and still, no help has arrived. Poor Lexi is freezing outside, but Brad stays by her side, supporting her from inside. The radio announces that they might have to stay quarantined for several days, which freaks Lexi out even more. In a panic, she tears through the plastic shield covering the house. Brad tries to stop her, and Alvaro helps to calm her down, telling her that the police and paramedics will arrive by morning. Lexi eventually settles down, but it's clear the situation is getting to her. Later, she asks Brad a big question. Will you live without me? Brad, being smart, simply tells her he loves her. Alvaro, on the other hand, is still trying to reach his wife but hasn't had any luck all day, and he's getting more anxious. Meanwhile, Brad decides, for some reason, to pour bleach over himself. Let's not ask why. Protagonist logic, I guess. The next morning, thankfully, Lexi is still alive. Brad hears sirens nearby, and Lexi spots 2 policemen arresting an infected person. But this isn't the help they were hoping for. Lexi returns to the house, realizing that Alvaro had lied about help coming. Brad, sensing that Lexi is about to panic again, comes up with a plan. He seals the bedroom door from the outside so that Lexi can come in through the back and stay in the bedroom. Why he didn't think of this sooner is anyone's guess. Finally, Lexi is inside but confined to the bedroom. Brad even makes a plastic wall so they can see each other. Then Brad drops a bomb. He tells her that she's going to die. The officials explain that the toxin has to be a certain size, like 1.5 microns. Though knowing this doesn't really help anyone. Lexi breaks down in tears, realizing the gravity of the situation. The two spend time together, separated by the plastic wall. While this is happening, Lexi's mom calls, and Lexi steps outside to talk. She notices Timmy, the little boy from earlier, wandering around and brings him inside. The poor kid has been alone since the explosion. Later, Brad and Alvaro get into a small argument, with Brad telling Alvaro to stop sucking his oxygen and to leave. Harsh, right? Brad quickly apologizes, but Alvaro takes it to heart and decides he wants to go home to his wife. Alvaro leaves, and Brad seals off another door. We see Alvaro walking away through the ashy streets. Meanwhile, Lexi and Timmy take a shower after Brad seals off the hallway. That night, Lexi notices someone in the yard trying to break in. They panic for a moment, but then they realize it's their friend Rick. Unfortunately, Rick is infected and coughing badly. He tells them there's a ship on the coast with medical supplies helping people, and he's here to take Lexi for help. Oddly enough, he flirts with Lexi, and Brad warns her not to trust him. But Lexi, desperate to survive, takes the risk and leaves with Rick and Timmy. Now Brad is left all alone. Not long after, Corporal Marshall and his team knock on the door, asking Brad questions about the house and if he's had any contact with people from outside. When they learn about Lexi's attempt to break through the window, they ask for samples of things she's touched. Confused, Brad gives them the samples, and they leave without much explanation. Later, Lexi comes running back home. Rick and Timmy were arrested by the police, but she somehow managed to escape. Brad tries to calm her down, but she starts coughing uncontrollably. She looks around with a flashlight and notices dead birds scattered everywhere. The two sit together, separated by the plastic wall, talking about what they'll do once this nightmare is over, if they survive. Suddenly, the marshals return and take Lexi away. Brad tries to follow them, but they lock the doors. Corporal Marshall informs Brad that the toxin inside the house has reached dangerous levels. When Lexi tried to break in, some of the toxin entered the house. The high humidity inside allowed it to multiply, and now the house is irreversibly contaminated. Brad, unfortunately, is infected beyond saving. In a cruel twist, those who left the house still have a chance to survive, but Brad is doomed. The marshals board up the house with plywood and drill a hole through which they pump in a lethal gas to kill Brad. Brad desperately begs to be let out, but it's too late. After trying so hard to stay inside, he now can't get out. He manages to break through a door and steps outside, only to find the entire house surrounded by a fumigation tent. There's no escape. The movie ends with Brad taking his last breaths as Lexi is seen being treated by paramedics. And that's how Right at Your Door ends.